Alright, Honor of King stream. Give me a moment while I try to set up the thing here. I'm still pretty new to this recording software, so give me a bit to familiarize with the interface. Okay, I believe you'll be seeing my screen now. Let's try to move the recording button out of the way. Okay, it's refusing to move properly. Okay, that's fine, whatever. Okay, so this is Honor of Kings, the global version. And the max level, I'm just going to do a rough introduction of the interface. So here is where you get the info, your match metrics, stuff like that. Okay, this is our match metric here. And then you also got a bunch of hero details, your skins. Currently, you can display a skin here. I'm just going to display anything. Okay, epic skin, whatever, don't really care about that. This honor system, I guess, is your achievements, and peak player is for those people who excel in the peak mode, who got quite a high ranking in the peak mode. Then you probably can get this peak player badge. Reputation 97, huh? I actually got reported. I don't know why, but okay. Anyway, this is my interface. And this is also my user ID. You can add me. You guys can add me if you want to play together, but I will just say that I solo queue 99% of the time. Okay. Let's see what else. This is just basically your Starstone. This is just your goal from Arena of Valor. They rename it Starstone so people don't actually get confused with gold, the in-game gold, which I find to be really funny. Okay, let's just go straight away to the builds, to the equipment page. I want to do a quick summary of the equipments and my thoughts about them in general. Okay, I think this part is quite important. So, this card can be quite dry, but it will help you a lot if you are looking to quickly get to know the items in Honor of Kings. If you play Arena of Valor, this is going to be very easy to understand. But if you're not an Arena of Valor player, then this will take a bit longer. And I will do a detailed explanation of each equipment and my thoughts about them. Alright, this is basically your rank breaker in Arena of Valor. All the warriors will need this. All your assassins, your junglers, and your solo clash laners, most of them will use this item. Unless they have some form of true damage in their build, then they don't need the armor pierce. This thing is really good because it gives you 500 health and it gives you 15% CD. Also, the amount of attack that it gives you is a respectable 85. 85 is a pretty high number of all the attack items that you get in this overlay over here. So yeah, a very decent item overall with a decent passive with a very good stats. Make it like a decent item overall. Okay, this is exclusively for your marksman. It gives you 20% base crit damage, and there's something that you have to know about this game is that your critical damage cap is at 250%, so you can only get additional 50% crit damage for your normal heroes. And so this item already gives you 20% base, which means that you will need 30% more crit damage to reach the cap. And in order to reach the cap, you need 60% crit chance. So for the marksmen who are buying this item, make sure that you get at least 60% crit chance in your build so they can maximize the passive of this item. Okay, if your critical damage is above 60%, then the additional crit damage that you get from the passive does not matter at all because you already reached the 250% cap. And this item is exclusively only for marksmen, as I said earlier. Very few warriors actually use this. Okay, next, Shadow Reaper. This item is a must-have for marksmen. For marksmen that deal crit that relies on crit for crit damage and for damage output in general, this item is really good. Marksmen, even for marksmen that don't really use crit, this can be good for them because it gives you quite a bit of attack speed. Specifically gives you 55% attack speed. You get 35% base from the item stat itself, and then you also get the passive actually increase your attack speed by 20% if you get a critical hit. So it's a total of 55% attack speed. and it's a whopping 25% crit rate. I think that's the highest crit item that I can get out of the game. And you also get 5% movement speed. So the stats is really, really good. And if you look at the price, it's only at 1950. That's actually low. I mean, in the lower average compared to the rest of the attack items. So this item is really, really good in value, in terms of value, I guess. And early game, something that a lot of players don't know is that your attack speed, your hitting interval don't actually decrease proportionally to your attack speed increase. So I mean by this, from 1, let's say your attack speed is 1 right now, and then when it gets to 30, and then it gets to 60, it doesn't increase linearly. Okay, your attack speed don't increase linearly. It's something like when your attack speed is at 1%, you hit really, really slowly. When your attack speed is 30, you hit decently quickly. And then when you get to the higher intervals, like where your attack speed reach 120 to 140 to 160, there's basically a marginal increase. So what I mean by this is that most marksmen really, really need a lot of attack speed at the start, because the amount of like value that you get from stacking attack speed at the start is really, really high, and in late game attack speed don't really matter that much. So what this means is, if you take a look at my build for my marksman, for a marksman that I'm in, this person, you can see that I tend to stack attack speed item at the start. Okay, this isn't really a good showcase. Okay, this is actually, you can expand the item, the builds, to this page over here, and this 6 item actually slots don't include your small items, your items building up to your tier 3 item. This 6 equipment slots don't show the tier 2 item and tier 1 item that makes up your tier 3 item. So if you take a look at my my more detailed build over here, you can see that I stack 2 attack speed items at the start, and then attack speed boot at the start to give my marksman a very high attack speed at the start. And then as the game go on, I'll actually swap the boots over to this boots of resistance, so that I can give myself some room for error. And so what I mean, the point that I'm trying to make is, you really want a very high attack speed at the start, and Shadow Reaper definitely gives you the highest attack speed of all the equipment that you can get in the game, as well as the highest crit rate. So it's super good for most marksmen out there. Doomsday, this thing is basically for marksmen who don't really need crit chance. I don't think this is good for a lot of marksmen out there, so I tend to avoid this item. This item is exclusive for strictly speaking for solo laners. I think this item is only good for your Fuzi, your Omen from Arena of Valor, but I don't think this item is good for anybody else besides Fuzi. Okay, this item is basically garbage, and a lot of people actually build this item. I think this item is actually a trap item. This item is actually really, really bad in Arena of Valor, and it was reworked a lot of times in Honor of Kings. It used to contain crit chance, now it does not have any crit chance at all. Its passive is every 3rd basic attack deals magical damage, but the thing is, as a marksman, you don't have any magical pierce at all, so it's going to be very insignificant magic damage at the end. Also, this thing, the 140 to 420 magical damage, this doesn't actually scales with your attack damage. It only scales like as stated in the equipment page itself, which is a lot less than if you are going a full attack build on a marksman, for example. So this item, I feel, is actually a trap item, even though it's cheap. I think the main selling point of this item is that it's very cheap. Okay, and it gives a decent amount of attack speed, but not having any crit rate and having a garbage passive absolutely brings its value down. So I would not recommend this item to anybody at all. Okay, Blood Sweeper here is basically for the beasts from Arena of Valor. This is basically a must get for all the marksmen out there, in my opinion. Unless you are going for at least 9 lifesteal Arcana in your Arcana page, then you can forgo this item. But I think like most marksmen should definitely still get this item because it gives you very high 100% physical attack damage. That's one thing. It gives you the highest physical lifesteal item you can get by far, compared to all the other items, and it gives you additional 500 health. This item in Arena of Valor costs like 18 the same amount of gold, but it gives no additional health and it has no passive at all. The passive itself is basically just plus 25% lifesteal, but in this version, Honor of Kings, you actually get an additional 500 health, and you get a passive, which is recover a bit of health when your health is below 30%. The cooldown of this is absurdly long at 20%, but you still get a very decent passive and also a good chunk of health, so that you can like avoid getting bursted down by assassins. So to me, this item is a must-have for a lot of marksmen out there. Alright, Daybreaker is basically your pierce item for your marksman in Arena of Valor. I don't know what that item is called. Oh, Dawning Star, yes. This item is basically a must-have for all your normal attack-based marksmen. If your marksman deal damage with your skills, then you can use Axe of Torment instead of Daybreaker. Generally, I don't suggest you stack both of these together. I suggest you only have direct pierce or percentage pierce. I don't suggest anybody to have percentage plus direct pierce, and I'm not going to talk in detail about the math, but trust me, you don't want both of them to be stacked together. It's better to have one than both. Okay, so Flaming Wrath, this thing is, I've never used this. I basically don't understand what it's for. It's definitely for like Slayer laners, Clash laners, I guess. I'm just going to call them Slayer laners. Clash laners are a little bit weird for me. Yeah, this is basically for Clash laners who likes to invade the enemy jungle. Usually, Clash laners that can solo push have a lot of mobility, but cannot really excel in team fights. So the strategy they adopt is to just like solo push a lane. They are never around at team fights. They are either invading the enemy jungle or camping in one of the bush in the side lane and try to look for opportunities to solo push. For those people out there, you might want to consider this item. But I think in general, this item is not really suited for a lot of heroes. Because with this item, you need to use Punish, I think. You need to use Smite. And if you use Smite, then you are essentially missing a skill. So the survivability is a lot lower, because if an assassin comes to gank you, then you don't have the flicker to run away. And having a Smite at the start is also not really good for you, because you aren't really the main jungle, you see. You aren't taking the red buff and the blue buff. So your rate of farming jungle monsters is a lot slower. So unless you really successfully invade the enemy jungle, your fighting potential at the start is a lot lesser than the enemy side, which means you can really scale very well, because if you successfully invade the enemy jungle and they do not detect you at all, you can farm very quickly. That's the advantage of this item. But a lot of time in higher elo games, they actually, whenever people see that you are using a Smite in the side lane, they will take note of you, especially. Their enemy jungler will take especial note of you, and then they will try especially hard to prevent you from invading their jungle. And if they have the sensibility to do that, then you are screwed basically, because your early game fighting potential is a lot lesser than using a traditional talent, and your survivability during ganks is a lot lower if you somehow do not like push your lane successfully and get pushed back by the enemy jungler instead, like sort of ganked under the tower by the enemy jungler. Then you're basically screwed for the rest of the game. For the rest of the game, you are essentially just stealing jungle monsters from your own jungler, and you're trying to scale out from that way, but like you're taking away resources from a team just to get yourself to a baseline level of fighting potential. So I feel like this strategy is okay if you are a really strong side laner. Definitely if you are using Omen, do not use this, you need your flicker. But if you're using a real strong side laner, you can consider this item, like a Lee Sin, for example. Lee Sin has a mode that is enables him to only solo push. He does not do well at teamfight at all. He's basically useless in teamfights. So with him, you can consider this item. I don't really know of anybody else that can use this item. Okay, this item is basically just there for you to this negate fatal damage. Is basically your death sickle in Arena of Valor. It's just there to swap out for your revive item. You almost never want to use this in your actual build itself. So at the end of the game, during the end of the game, I like to swap out my boots for this revive item, and then once I die, then I will swap it out for this destiny item, and it will give me a few seconds of invulnerability. But that's about its uses. I don't recommend this item at all in your normal build because the stats that it gives is frankly garbage, and the only thing that is useful is its passive. And yeah, the passive is okay, but nowhere near compared to something like a defense item. If you're using this, you might as well, for survivability, you might as well use a defense item. And this item gives garbage stats. This stat, 60 physical attack at 5% cooldown, is horrendous for an item that costs 1900 gold. It's for the item to have such garbage stats, it needs to at least cost, at most cost like 1300 gold, but it's 1900 gold, so you're really wasting a lot of gold for a garbage item. So do not get this, unless only get this when you're trying to swap your revive item out. Okay, this thing is not really that useful in my opinion. This thing is basically your Omni Arms from Arena of Valor, but it's really not that useful, and I'll explain why later on. But I usually don't use this item at all. The only good thing about it is it gives you 20% crit rate, which is one of the highest of all the crit items out there. And the other stats are okay. The passive is also okay. But the problem with this item is there's just one item with a similar passive that's actually just better than it. Okay, next, Starbreaker. This thing is kind of garbage, because as an assassin, normally you will just buy this. As I mentioned, you do not want to stack direct pierce with percentage pierce. So if you're a marksman, you will get Daybreaker, and if you're an assassin, you will use Axe of Torment. Most of the time you will not get this, and I'll just do a brief explanation why. It's because the stats are garbage. 80 physical attack, 10% cooldown is not really that good, especially when it doesn't give you any health or any like useful passive at all. You don't get any passive besides from the pierce. At least for Axe of Torment, it gives you a little bit of pierce and also like a little passive mime. Slows the enemy down by 10%. That's not a lot, but at least it's something. And also gives you health and a lot of CD. This thing gives you 10% CD. It's a lot lesser than the Axe thing. So really not that useful at all. Siege Breaker. This thing is almost, I never ever use it. It's too expensive, way too expensive. The stats it gives is pretty bad. It's only 180 physical attack. In Arena of Valor, it's actually 200 attack. And even then, very little jungler gets that, because it's just way too expensive, and there's better like options early on in the game. Maybe you can swap an item out for this when you get to the very late game, but I would not recommend this item in your regular build. This item is pretty much garbage, in my opinion. I mean, I'm still really a diamond in this game, so I can't really speak much. But from my experience in item building, this item is not really available in Arena of Valor, so maybe it might have niche users here. But to me, it's just basically garbage, because okay, it gives you physical pierce that's half. You can stack it up to 2 times, right? So if you stack it up to 2 times, then you have basically the same physical pierce as Axe of Torment. And Axe of Torment gives a lot better stats. It gives you cooldown reduction and HP, which are core stats. While this thing gives you attack speed and like a little bit of physical attack. It's 65 compared as opposed to 85 from the Axe. And not just that, it has the same goal for the same for a worse stat line. Also, it gives you 25% attack speed, which not a lot of heroes use. And normally if you're a marksman and you need attack speed, you'd rather get something like a Shadow Reaper, something that actually adds a lot to your basic attack rather than just nothing, just a pure attack speed buff. The passive is Tempers, grant 35% attack speed boost for 5 seconds for the next 3 basic attack. It's not even 35% attack speed boost for the rest of the 5 seconds. It's only for the next 3 basic attack, which is nothing, to be honest. So really just garbage item for me. It does not give enough pierce to be useful at all, and does not give crit, so marksman wouldn't use this. And your regular attack speed reliant heroes like Fuzi, for example, will not even use this because he doesn't need attack speed. He doesn't need pierce in the first place. And even if he needs pierce, I think he would rather get this instead because it gives him health and cooldown. So this item is just garbage. Okay, this Sky Piercer thing. It has 2 passive. I want to talk about first passive first. First passive is garbage because it reduces the target's physical defense by only 10%. That's nothing. If you are getting a percentage pierce item, this also overlaps with percentage pierce. So you pretty much only need to be building Axe of Torment in order to really get the full value from the first passive over here. But if you are a marksman, usually a marksman uses crit rate, right? If you are a marksman, you are getting percentage pierce. So the first passive actually interrupts percentage pierce. I mean, it overlaps with percentage pierce, so not that useful. Second passive is a knockback, with a very short cooldown, but the knockback itself is not that far. Also, I really don't know about this. It's really not that far, and the range is quite short. So I wouldn't really recommend this item. The good thing about it is it gives a decent amount of health and a good chunk of physical attack. 100 physical attack. One of the more physical physical attack in the game. 10% crit rate, which is decent. Overall, I say this item has good stat line. The problem is that it's a little bit pricey at 2,130 gold, and also it has 2 very mediocre passives. So for me, this item is an okay item, but it's not a good item. And with so many good items down, I don't think you can fit 6 item. I don't think you can include this in your 6 item slot because you have very limited item slot to work with. If you have a 7th item slot, I think this could work. But for most heroes out there, this won't be in their core build. Okay, Deep Frost Siege, another very niche item. I think this thing is only good for Omen because it doesn't give you any crit chance. So it's already out for most marksmen out there. Also gives very basic stats. I mean, 600 max health and 30% attack speed is not really even basic stats. It's kind of in the garbage territory. The only saving grace for this thing is passive is actually pretty good. The first passive is something that you really need to stack. You only benefit it from hitting the enemy 5 times. You truly benefit only from that. And so you need somebody that's really, really high attack speed like Fuzi. The only person that I think can use this item is Fuzi. The second passive is actually really good. So it has a decent passive and a good passive plus garbage stat line. That makes the item okay for Fuzi, but not a good item in my opinion. So you can use this item only if you are using Fuzi. You will not use this item for any of your other marksmen out there. Also, I think it actually has a passive that overlaps with the item that I'm going to talk about later on. Okay, Mortal Punisher. This item, don't ever buy this because the only good thing that you can get out of it is anti-heal. And generally for the marksman, you won't want to use anti-heal because most of your attacks are not AoE. You want your mage, for example, somebody with AoE like attacks to actually apply the anti-heal to a range rather than you applying it to individual targets, which is a lot less effective use of the passive. Also, the stats that it gives is okay. not great. It does not have any crit, which a marksman really need. Physical lifesteal 50%, that's decent. And it has a low price. So I would say for its price, this item is good stats. The only bad thing is its passive is basically useless for a marksman because your damage is not AoE. If somehow there comes arrives a AoE marksman, something like Elisio for example can take advantage of this, I think. A marksman that have AoE skills that does not rely on crit can use this actually. But usually, as I mentioned, the mage will build it, so you will sort of have an overlapping passive with the mage, which isn't really ideal. So I would say for majority of the cases, a marksman will not buy this unless you are Elisio and unless your mage don't build anti-heal. Only under those two circumstances, then you will buy this item. Next is Runic Blade. This item is kind of looks good on paper, but is actually not that great. There's two options for if you are going for a pure attack damage build, then you can consider this item. Most of the time, this item is only good for assassins that really scales well with attack damage. Okay, and they want a bit of survivability. The good thing about this item is that it gives you 500 health. Okay, having health is always good on your items because it gives you some survivability, avoid getting bursted down. Also gives the highest physical magical defense out of every item in the game. Once you have reached 500 attack damage. So if you really want to use this item, you should only use this in your 5th of 6th slot. And there's one item, magic defense item that actually supersedes this, in my opinion. But as I mentioned, if you scale well with attack damage and you want some survivability, you can still use this item. If you want pure survivability, then you should use another item that I will talk about later. Okay, Pure Sky. This item is the similar item is similar in AoV. I would say this item is good for most assassins out there, most clash laners. Marksmen would not use this item. This item gives very decent stats: 10% cooldown, 500 health, 100 physical damage. That's a lot. It's a little bit pricey at 2120, but for the stats that it gives, it's absolutely worth it. Also, it has two really good passive. Both of them are really good. So generally, this item is a must-have for me. For a lot of my clash laners and assassins. Also, another thing that I want to mention just before. Okay, let's go through the rest of the item first. This item is not really that applicable. And you have Sun Chaser here. Let's talk about the Sun Chaser. I'm not going to talk about the 3000 gold item because they are basically upgraded versions of this 2000 gold item. And you will not have access to them until 20 minutes later. 20 minutes has passed, which isn't like very common in the normal game. So I'll just skip these two items. Sun Chaser is an item only for marksmen. You will never ever get this under any circumstances for non-range heroes. The stats that it gives is kind of lacking because it's only 5% attack speed, 10% crit damage. That's a lot lesser than items of similar prices. The good thing about it is it has two very strong passive. Might be the strongest passive out there for marksman in the game. Okay, 100 attack damage, plus 100 attack damage for basic attacks for marksman. That is really high, absurdly high actually. Also, the active increases your range by 150% and it's whopping 5 seconds. 5 seconds, that's a lot for like a marksman. You can really like one shot somebody in the late game and you have it increase like range for 5 seconds. That is really good. When you're trying to, you can even like try to start a team fight just by using this item, cause the enemy will think they are out of range, right? And they will not expect you to like use the item passive and start attacking them. And when you have the red buff in the late game, you can really slow someone down by a lot. And you can really burst them down very quickly. So you can actually use this item and surprise your enemy and really start a team fight that way as a marksman, which is like really uncommon. No item in the game can actually let a marksman like start a fight. So this item really good. Any item that basically can increase the range of marksman is going to be really good. So this item is a must-have for most basic attack marksman out there, I would say. Alright. We'll skip the magical defense. I think we'll leave this to another chapter. We'll talk about the defense item first, followed by a movement item, and then I'll leave the magical and roaming item and jungle item. Jungle item, I will not do an explanation on this. I think you can also go and read on this. Fairly basic stuff. Just going to talk about boots before I jump to defense item. As I mentioned, for magical and roaming, I'm going to leave it to later on because it's kind of separate for physical and defense items. I'm just going to talk about the boots real quick. Let me just have a sip of water here because I've been talking for quite some time already, and just need a quick water break. Okay. Boots is different from Arena of Valor in this game because you can swap them with a 5-second cooldown. Okay, that is really important because okay, let's switch over to my Nakaruru build, for example. Nakaruru is a jungle, it's quick neck basically from Arena of Valor. And you can see that I'm using a cooldown boots on the jungler, which is really strange, right? Normally, jungler will use boots of resistance. That's because I swap this boot out for the boots of resistance later on in the game once my cooldown is there. This way, my early game jungle farming time is sped up by a lot because you don't really need boots of resistance at the start of the game because you are basically like spending most of your time in your own jungle. So you are really exposed to very little risk of getting CC'd by an enemy unless the enemy is really aggressively invading your jungle. Then maybe you can switch to boots of resistance, but most of the time I will still say this is going to be useful for you because at the start of the game your skill level is very low, which means that for most heroes out there your skill CD is relatively high compared to your late game. So you really get a lot of value of stacking CD at the start of the game, and later on when you really need a magic defense and resistance, then you can swap over. This mechanic is obviously not available in Arena of Valor. In fact, you can buy multiple boots, but in Honor of Kings you can only get one pair of boots at any time, which makes it like a little bit different from playing in Arena of Valor, for example. Alright, so basically, as I mentioned, you have to swap boots. If you use only boots of resistance, your early game jungle clear is going to be very slow. And I think that's the only key to take away from this. If you don't remember anything else I tell you about boots, just remember that you have to swap your boots. And for junglers, always just start with CD boots. And even for your marksman, always start with attack speed boots. And later on, when your attack speed gets ramped up, then you can switch over to your boots of resistance. Never ever get your boots of resistance at the start of the game. Okay, let's talk about the boots of fortitude. This item not really that useful for me. It reduces physical damage by 10%. That's pretty low. Not enough to be useful. Maybe useful for enemy composition with very little CC or with a very heavy physical damage composition. Even for those, I guess you can use this boot in those cases. This boots is going to be your go-to boots for 90% of the situation out there, because CC is so deadly in mobile games. Once you are CC, you basically can't do anything. This even prevents like the CC duration of slows, anything basically. So reducing CC is always going to be worth it. Also, compared to Arena of Valor, this is 5% less resistance, but 30% more magical defense. I would say that's a fair exchange. Okay, let's talk about attack speed boot. This is actually better than the Arena of Valor boots. It has 5% less attack speed, but each basic attack gives you additional health. And that is really good because you have very lacking sustain at the start of the game, and having such a useful passive, especially for a marksman, will ensure that you don't constantly have to go back to your base to regen health. And that is really important because you don't want to be constantly going back to base because you will lose out on a lot of farming. Boots of Deafness, I don't think anybody will get this. I do not have this on, and I will not use this boot in any of my builds. maybe only on the Kha'Zix from Arena of Valor. I don't think it's available here though. So yeah, this boot is gonna be very niche. Just like the Boots of Fortitude, even nicher than the Boots of Fortitude, I would say. So definitely don't get this. Let's talk about the CD boot. As I mentioned, this boot is a must-have for all the junglers out there. It's also going to be a must-have, or not must-have, but I think it's a must-have. It's going to be a must-have for most of your mages out there, because mages rely on their skills a lot. They're not going to use any of basic attack at all. For some of your clash laners, they also rely a lot on their skills instead of their auto attacks. But even for them, they can mix in their auto attack in the early game actually does significant amount of damage because of their Arcana. But as a mage, your auto attack does basically no damage at all, even in the early game, because you are not using attack based Arcana, right? So you're super reliant on your skill, is what I'm trying to say, and not your basic attack at all. So you really need your cooldown to be low in the game. Also, for a lot of mages out there, your cooldown is going to be very high at the start, because most major skill actually scale with level. So you are really reliant on that cooldown reduction. Besides the cooldown reduction, this thing also gives another passive. It reduce the cooldown of the common skills by 50%. Okay, this thing got me really confused at the start. I don't really know what's common skills, but then it's just basically your talent from Arena of Valor, your flicker, your weaken, etc. So that's not a very good passive. I mean, it's an additional extra passive, so I will just take it. It's not really a super useful passive. Yeah. Main thing you're getting out of this is still a 50% CDR, which is really really high for any equipment. So you can basically get 50% CDR only at 710 gold. To me, that's like a deal. Especially for mages, which don't really need any defense stat at the start. Okay, so a must-have for a lot of heroes out there in general, not just mages, not just junglers. Some marksmen can even use this, like your skill reliant marksman. For example, your who is the hero called? Your sniper hero, the Souyue. He's called Souyue here, but I forgot. Oh, he's also from Arena of Valor. Even for he, you can use these boots at the start. But generally for marksman, I would recommend boots of dexterity. You need some attack speed at the start for marksman out there, unless you are only looking to snipe with Elsu, and that's kind of really annoying for me because Elsu is a little bit different in this game. You really rely a lot on your auto attacks. The devs try to, because a lot of Elsu actually only snipes, and the community really dislike this. In general, that's also a case for Arena of Valor. A lot of Elsu players get like smirked for just constantly sniping, constantly being at the back and never entering a team fight and never using auto attacks. So it's the same case here. So the devs tweaked his kit a little bit to make him more reliant on auto attacks. So unless you are really really good at sniping, you should just build regular attack speed. So I would say marksman not applicable to marksman, but for all the classes out there, your support, your mages, your junglers, they are really reliant on the skills. So having a CDR is really good for them. So this boot is going to be S tier. Same with the boots of resistance. Alright, next, this boot is exclusively for mages because okay, maybe you can use this for your magic damage like clash laners, slayer laners, melee units, I guess. But in most cases, this is going to be for your mages. Arena of Valor's the penetration boots only give you 75 magic pierce. It does not give you any mana regen at all. This has mana regen on top of 25% more magic pierce. So it's absolutely a steal for me. So what I like to do for my mages, let's just go to my this hero, for example. If you take a look at my build, you can see that I've included CD boots at the start. But later on, as the game progresses, especially when I get the Holy Grail, this gives me 50% cooldown. Once I stack like my cooldown reduction, I'll switch my boots over to this magic pierce boots, my CD boots over to my magic pierce boots, and you have 88 base magic pierce from your Arcana. You add this to your 100% magic pierce, you get 188 magic pierce. Unlike Arena of Valor, magic defense doesn't actually scale in this game to your level, right? I think in the late game for Arena of Valor champions, your magic defense can go up to like 400, even for like a marksman, for example. But in this game, your magic defense does not increase at all with your level. So 160 your max magic defense of most hero in this game is 168. As long as your magic pierce is above 168, you're basically doing true damage to a lot of the squishy heroes out there. So these boots combined together with your Arcana will give you enough magic penetration to do true damage to the enemy. In my opinion, a lot of players won't actually build magic defense items, and even those who actually build it, they'll have a total of, I think, 289 magic pierce. So you have 188, 289 minus 188, you are left with 101 magic defense on them, effective magic defense. And so, like, it's really good compared to getting only 45% magic pierce. If you think about it, 45% out of 289 is what? Is okay. So the magic penetration calculation actually goes like this. You minus 88 first. Okay, so 289 minus 88 is you get left with 201, and you take 0.55 times 201, you get 110 effective magic defense on the enemy. However, if you use direct magic pierce, direct magic pierce, you get 188. Okay, so you use 289 minus 188, you are left with 101. So if you use direct magic pierce, is actually better than you getting a void staff, and this is a whole tier 3 item. You can get the same value of just using a single boot. So to me, this boot is a must have for all the mages out there in the late game. I will absolutely use this boot for a lot of my mages out there. I don't think there's any mage that I not use this on, unless it's somebody that does a lot of heavy true damage. Even for somebody like Diao Chan, true damage is not going to be a main part of a kit. So unless it's a hero that really does a lot of true damage, I don't think there's any hero right now with that thing. Even Leicester, for example, does quite a bit of true damage, but most of his, I would say 60% of his damage is still going to be magic damage. So even for Leicester, I will build this boots because it's just so good. Direct magic pierce here is just so good, and it gives you like 100 of it, which is really high. Okay, that covers the boots part. Okay, finally let's talk about the defense. I think I've been rambling on for quite long already. Let's just finish this quickly. I guess I'll just speed through this. I think. Should I go through? I think if it's a garbage item, then I won't talk much about it. But if it's a really good item, I'll then explain in detail why I think that's the case and who do I build it on. Okay, this item is good if you are the higher elo and you are a support player. But if you are not in the high elo or you are not a support player, then this item is not good for you. Absolutely trash for you. So for 99% of the cases out there, you are not going to use this unless you are a support main and you are playing the higher elo. Okay, next, this item. This item is only good for its passive, which reduces the enemy's healing. So if your mage is not really getting this item, then and the enemy has very high healing, then you should get this item. But otherwise, I don't think this item is good at all. It's also good for your tanky clash laners, but most tier 1 clash laners out there is not going to be like super tanky. It's going to be like very fast split pushers or people that have very high DPS and able to clear the lane very quickly. So this is only left for your Slayer laners, who are your tier 3 and tier 4 Slayer laners, who are usually exclusively reserved for tanky heroes. Tanky Slayer laners are just not that good now in this meta. So if you really want to proceed with tanky solo hero, tanky solo laner heroes, then I guess you can use this item. But for me, this item is just not worth it. The value that it gives and the passive is just not worth it for me. Yeah. This item is a must-have if you are a support hero, in my opinion, because it reduces the enemy's attack speed by 40%. Okay, maybe not a must-get, but for most support heroes out there, you want this item, because 40% reduction in attack speed, that is a ridiculous amount. Okay, and if the enemy is really reliant on attack speed, this will severely cripple them. Something like a monkey, for example, Wukong, something like a Zanis, for example, who rely a lot on attack speed. Even for heroes that rely on empowered basic attack, like Wukong, for example, they are attacked by they are affected by their attack speed, because if your attack speed is really low, your enhanced basic attack is going to be meted out really slowly, right? So this will really affect their skill, the skill fluidity, I would say. Like, they can't really connect one skill to the next very smoothly. They'll have a massive delay when using their empowered auto attack. So this will severely cripple the smoothness of their skills. Yeah. So this item, I would say, if you are really a team player and you are support, get this item. If you are somebody that wants to really dish out damage, then you don't get this item, because obviously it doesn't give you any attack damage. It only cripples the enemy. So if you are Slayer laner, and if your opposing Slayer laner is really reliant on empower auto attacks, then you can get this item, I guess. If you are fighting a Fuzi, then you definitely want to get this item. Okay, next, Aegis. Your Aegis from Arena of Valor. So this item is actually way better than Aegis, because Aegis and this item share the same stat line, and I think they give me a moment. Okay, sorry for the interruption. This item share the same stat line as your Aegis, and it has the same goal. I think Aegis have slightly higher goal than this, so this item is already cheaper in that aspect. Already better because it's cheaper. But the passive that it has is absolutely overshadows Aegis by a amount. Okay. First, I think Aegis has a super small range. This thing has actually a larger range than Aegis. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing is the proccing requirement. Okay, the procking, I think Aegis is automatically applied. Well, for this thing, it's you need to lose 10% or more of your current health. So that's a slight disadvantage, I would say. But lose 10% of your current health, that's a pretty pretty easy to fulfill activation requirement, because 10% of your health, I mean, usually one attack from enemy skill usually dish out 10% of your health, so it's, I would say, a fairly easy activation requirement to meet. But here's the thing, it reduces the attack speed by 15%. I think Aegis reduces the attack speed of the enemy by 30%, so it's slightly lower, but it reduces their movement speed by 30%. Holy shit! Aegis does not decrease their attack speed by 30% at all. The 30% slow is actually shifted over to this item over here. What is it called? The White Shield in Arena of Valor. So you do not get any movement speed decrease for the enemy at all. So if you are using this item as a Clash laner, you can use this to actually stop once you get close to the enemy ADC, for example, then you can keep sticking to them, because this will prevent them from running away effectively, because they are, as soon as they attack you while they're close, they'll get the movement speed reduction buff dealt to them. And there's one more thing here. Reducing it by 30% is good, but if it's just that is not going to be great. But if you take a look, it's 2 whole seconds, and the passive cooldown itself is also 2 seconds, which means that this is going to be a permanent debuff. It's not something like a like this thing for example, that only activates every 3 seconds. It activates every 2 seconds and it lasts for 2 seconds. So this is going to be like something permanently applied. As long as they keep attacking you, you'll keep like activating the debuff on them. And this is going to be really useful, especially if you're a melee unit trying to get close to the enemy ADC. Not get close, but trying to stick to the enemy ADC and prevent him from kiting you. This is going to be a really good item for that. Yeah, so the stat line that it gives does not give you any health. That's the only downside. But I would say if you are a tank Slayer laner, then you 100% need this item. The only heroes that shouldn't really use this item is heroes that don't have mana, because this gives 500 mana, right? And if you are a hero that don't use this mana, obviously you will be losing out a little bit of stats of gold from these stats. So this item won't be super gold efficient for you if you don't have mana, but still overall it's a pretty good item. Spike Mail. This item is useful. I would say it's a decent item, but not a good item. So usually it does not make it to the top 6 of my item slots. Top 5 of my item slots, sorry, because you have a boots, right? So you only have 5 item slots. Usually it doesn't make it to a top 5 equipment for a certain hero. The main problem with this is the passive is pretty good. Okay, not pretty good, decent. It's not up to the good tier, I would say. It has 2 decent passive. The main downside of this is it does not give you any health at all. And there are 2 items that are similar to this, and also gives physical attack, but gives health. So usually I would prefer to use those 2 items instead of this one. Yeah. So I would say this item is only for certain heroes you'll use this, for a specific group of hero, but your general heroes out there, you will not use this item. Okay, Succubus Cook. This item is the magic defense item that supersedes this runic blade. Okay, if you do want survivability and you do not want to, don't scale very well with attack damage, which are most heroes in the game. Most heroes in the game do not scale well with attack damage. They do not scale so well with attack damage to justify this item. I mean, if you are something like a Backman or Nakururu, then who scales extremely well with attack damage, then you can get this item. Or Lubu. Lubu also scales extremely well with this item. But unless you are those heroes that scale extremely well with attack damage, you will want this item to negate magic defense. It gives you slightly less magic defense. Okay, you can get 410, no, not 410, 400 as compared to the maximum 320. But this item gives you a 1100 magical shield when out of combat. That's a lot of magical shield, damage shield they can get in the late game. So for most heroes out there, if you really prioritize survivability, if the enemy has a lot of magic damage dealer and you want survivability and you don't really scale that well with attack damage, this item is a must-have. Okay, next, I think that's enough of the explanation. Next, there's only very little magic defense item in the game, so almost 100% of the time you're going to use this if you want some form of survivability and don't scale well with attack damage. Okay, this is the item that supersedes this. The main attracting point of this thing is it gives you 38 physical attack. Well, you can say that this item gives you physical attack as well. Why would you want this item? This item also gives you 360 physical defense as compared to only 220. So why is this item any good? It's because your physical defense don't scale linearly, just like with attack speed. The damage reduction that you get out of every unit of physical attack physical defense, don't scale linearly. What I mean by this is, if you have 300 armor, for example, and then your damage reduction is 30%, when you have 600 physical defense, your damage negation does not double to 60% from 30%. It sort of stays around like 45%. And then as your physical defense get higher, maybe to 900 for example, it doesn't go up to 60%, it goes to like 55%. So the increase is slowly like getting lesser and lesser. That means that in your late game, having a lot of armor doesn't actually do you much good, doesn't offer you more damage reduction than you expect. It gives you a very marginal bonus in damage reduction. And on the contrary, HP actually scales linearly, because it's HP, right? Obviously it scales linearly. With any HP, you absorb 1% more damage. With 1% more HP, you negate 1% more damage before you die. So HP scales linearly. HP in the late game is going to be a lot more useful than your armor. And 900 max health is actually a lot. Compared to the other defense items, actually an average, like it's a baseline level. And this item, the selling point of it gives you 30 physical attack damage, which is a good amount. It's not a very high amount, but it's a good amount. And it gives you 900 health, which is a decent amount. 220 physical defense is a little bit on the low side, but it's acceptable. And 5% movement speed, that's another great stat to have. So for item of 2050 gold, it actually has pretty good stats. 2050 gold is like an average amount of gold for item. And it gives you the individual stat actually don't really amount to much, but it gives you 4 of like decent stats. So, and it ends up being like quite a decent item overall, quite a good stats item overall. And it also gives you a very good passive. When taking damage, increased damage by 2%, movement speed by 1%, stacks up to 5 times. Often you will get full stacks very quickly, because enemies like negative debuffs also count as damage. For example, if they have a healing anti-heal aura or something like a burn, that also counts as part of your taking damage. So you can really rack up like 5 stacks of your passive really quickly for this item. And the passive is actually pretty good. Increase your damage by 10% and movement speed by 5%. That's just the damage increase itself. 10% the late game is a lot. Not a lot of item can actually give you 10% pure attack damage at the end. Remember, this is attack damage. This is not attack amount. This is not your attack damage. So if you are if you don't scale very well with your attack damage, then having 10% more attack, if let's say you have a skill with very high basic attack, right, and it scales very badly with attack, 10% of that is going to be a lot higher than just having 10% of your regular attack. Oh, this item is going to be useful for your half tanky hero, your as I mentioned, your warriors, your half tank build, half attack damage, half defense build. So it's usually not going to be on the hero that have a lot of attack damage scaling. And for those heroes, 10% damage increase is going to be very useful for them as compared to a lot of normal attack damage items. So this item has a really, really good passive that boosts your attack damage on top of giving you more movement speed, and having a very good stat line makes it a very decent item, defense item in general for me. And I basically have this item on almost all of my assassins. Almost all of my half tanky assassins. I wouldn't use this item for a full tank assassin like a Nakaruru or a Batman, for example. They call Batman Landing King here, but Landing King is a little bit weird for me, so I'll just call him Batman from Arena of Valor. You will not really want this on your assassins that purely focuses on just doing one how do you put this, like one burst damage combo, one burst combo. Then you probably won't want this item. But for those half tanky warriors that likes to stay in the fight, this item is a must have for them. Okay, this item is basically garbage. Do not get this item. If you want magic defense, get this item. And if you do not want magic defense, you won't consider this item at all, because its stats only give you magic defense, and HP, you can get HP from other places. So I really don't see why you would want this item. The reason for that is that the passive is just way too lacking compared to Succubus Cloak. So there's not going to be a time where this item is more useful than Succubus Cloak, in my opinion. So this item is completely redundant and superseded by Succubus Cloak. And even if you want like a lot of magic defense, most of the time Runic Blade will be a better option. Yeah, so this item is just garbage for me. Okay, next, revive item. This item, something to take note of is it does not have any. It costs 2,100 flat. It does not have any items that build up to it. So it's going to be really, really bad as a 6 item, because you will need 2,100 gold to get this item, and then you do not have any in-between items. So your 6 slot is going to be permanently empty until you reach 2,100 gold. And that period of like emptiness, I guess, I don't really know how to put it, the period where you slowly try to accumulate 2,100 gold is going to be really bad for you, because the enemy going to have 6 items and you're going to have 5 items in your inventory, and they're obviously going to be dealing more damage to you because of a lack of item. So yeah, this item, I would say, only get it in the late game where you have like a lot of gold left, and then you can sell your boots for this. But otherwise, I wouldn't really get this item, unless it's super late in the game, I would say. You can certainly replace the 6 item in your item slot with this item if your gold is enough. But usually I will only want to replace my boots for this item, because I'm not losing that much gold in comparison. Okay, just give me a moment here. Okay, yeah, so this stream segment has taken a lot longer than I anticipated. I'll just quickly finish all of the defense items, then I think I'll stop the stream here. I'll continue on to the description of the other items later on. Out of the Phoenix, this thing is pretty garbage. I mean, it's only good for heroes that have really, really high restore self-healing ability. Take note that this boosts your own healing only. So if you are something like a Helen from Arena of Valor, you're something like a Cai Wenji. I mean, it's really hard to, because all of these Chinese like names are directly translated from their Chinese counterparts. So saying Cai Wenji in English is gonna be really weird. So yeah, this thing is only good for. Actually, I don't even know what she's called here. Is it Cai Wenji? Who is this? This Cai Yan. Okay, Cai Yan is a lot manageable than Cai Wenji. Cai Yan here, if you use this on her, she will not dish out more healing to your allies. It's only healing for themselves. So it gives you 240 magical defense. That's a pretty awkward stat to have, because you're not getting this item for the magic defense. It gives you a decent amount of health, 12,000, 1,200 max health. That's a lot of health. But normally, you will not get this item for the magic defense at all. You only get it for its passive. Its passive is going to be really, really good for people that can heal very well. But otherwise, you will almost never ever get this item for its other stat line. Also, it costs 2,100 gold, which is fairly pricey. So I would say stay away from this item unless you can heal a lot. Not even like somebody like Zephys, for example. It's called Zhao Yun here, but Zephys from Arena of Valor can heal with his skill too. But even that is not really enough to justify this item. You will need a lot of healing, something like a Cao Cao or a Lu Bu from Arena of Valor. Then you can consider using this item, because their healing is a core part of their skill. So unless healing is going to be healing a lot, and healing is going to be a core part of your skill, do not get this item at all. This item is completely useless for me. It's superseded by a lot of items. The stats that it gives, I mean, the passive is okay. It's not great, but it's okay. And then it gives you 30% movement speed while out of combat. But to be out of combat, you really have to be like out of combat for very long. And usually in lower elo, you tend to fight a lot. So there's not going to be a whole lot of duration when you're out of combat that you can take full advantage of the item's passive. Also, the stat line that it gives is just garbage. It only give you max health without any gain in like defense, magic defense, physical defense. So it's just horrible for me. The stats is just horrible. Never get this item at all. And if you want some kind of healing, then just go back to base, I guess, rather than use this item. Okay. This item, the main selling point of this item is that it gives you 10% cooldown reduction. The only cooldown reduction item that you get from the items is Glacial Blocker and Dawnlight. Dawnlight, as I said, you will never get it unless you are support playing in high elo. So this item is automatically out for most people. This item itself is good, decent, but it's not going to be a must-have for people that do not have mana. So that leaves this item. It also gives you mana, yes, but it also gives you a bit of max health, which is going to be really good. Basically, I would say this item has a decent passive with super good stats. 40 physical attack as compared to 30 from your other regular hybrid attack defense equipment. It gives you 40 physical attack, that's 10 more. It gives you 10% cooldown reduction, which is a rarity among all your defense items. It gives you 500 mana, which is, I guess, is okay for people who uses mana, because you are going to be very mana deficient in the mid game. Okay, your late game is okay. I think most people do not lack mana in the late game, because your mana healing actually skills in the late game, I think. But yeah, 500 mana, why not? 240 physical defense, that's a lot. I mean, like, that's actually, as for a hybrid item, it actually is a lot, 240. And it also gives you 500 max health, which is a good amount for a hybrid item as well. So all of the stats individually is okay, but then you get 5 of them in just one package. So I would say that this item is a must-have for a lot of people who, even if they can't really take advantage of the passive itself, this item is still pretty good for them. His passive is also going to be really good, because why is this the case? Because it only has a cooldown of 1.2 seconds. Alright, as compared to this item which has 3 seconds cooldown. This item over here has 3 seconds cooldown. This item gives 20% crit rate. And for a lot of laners out there who rely on their enhanced basic attack, they do not take advantage of the crit rate. So the crit rate is not really applicable for them. Also, the low cooldown time of 1.2 seconds as opposed to 3 seconds means that you can proc that passive a lot more often. That means you can do, in the ideal situation, you can do 2.5 times more passive as compared to the other as compared to this item over here. And the amount of damage that you deal is definitely going to be lesser for each passive that's proc, but you are dealing 2.5 times more damage from your passive. Okay, assuming an ideal situation where you keep proccing your passive. So usually for the heroes out there, you are proccing your skills every 2 seconds, like roughly every 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds, if you are following up with your enhanced attack. Okay, I think 2 seconds is a little bit too much. It's more like 1 to 1.5 seconds, which perfectly fits the cooldown duration here, which means that for most of the time you are actually taking full advantage of the cooldown for this passive, the low cooldown for this passive. So as a total, you are actually dealing more damage from the passive as compared to the attack item, which really makes it even better if you want DPS, in my opinion. So, and it also is not intended as a like damage dealing skill. It's more for the slow, 30% slow. but you are actually dealing more damage out of it. So in most cases, this item actually supersedes this this item over here, in my opinion, especially because not a lot of enhanced auto attack relies on crit, and this item do not give you any crit. That's fine, but it gives you a lot of other good stats. So since you have since you have a passive that overlaps with this, for most of the time I will prioritize this over the other item. Okay, having a slow that procs constantly also means that people find it harder to get away from you. So if you're a melee unit, then you can stick to them, I guess. And if you're a range unit, normally you wouldn't want to get this because it's a 20% slow for range units, so it's really a little bit lesser. And this item, I would say, is mostly for physical attack damage unit. Melee attack damage unit that want to stick to their targets. So range units won't even get this in the first place, and even if they do, the passive is slightly weaker. So I would say stay away from this if you are a range damage dealer. Okay, so this item is gonna be a must-have for a lot of my assassins. For example, if you go to my Nakoruru here, let's see, Nakoruru, where are you? Here she is. Okay, you can see that I use this over this Omni Arms, physical attack damage Omni Arms here. Yeah. So this gives me survivability and also allows me to stick better to the enemy and also gives me more DPS. So I think this item is completely better in every aspect compared to the attack damage counterpart. Okay, Blood Rage. I think this is going to be the last item that I'm going to talk about. This item is going to be really niche. Frigid Charge. This item, I think actually Frigid Charge, I guess, is okay. This item we don't get at Arena of Valor at all. It's an active item. There are very few active items here. Most of the time, for active item for your Slayer laners, you want to get this. So there's very little cases where you want this over this Pure Sky. Really little situations which you need this. I think this is only good if you are a tank and you are looking to CC the enemy instead of deal damage, which I don't think is the case for most solo kills games out there. When you play a solo kill game, you normally want to just dish out damage, kill the enemy, and then carry your team, right? So you don't really want to, like, this is more like a support item, I would say, similar to this one, than really something that lets you one-on-one kill the enemy, that kind of thing. So I guess if you are playing a tanky solo laner, then maybe attack damage won't apply to you too much, then maybe you'll consider this item instead. But in general, this item does not give you any CD reduction, and the stats that it gives you is okay, but it's also a little bit pricey. And besides the stunning skill, which only lasts for 0.5%, by the way, it increases to 0.75 if you slow the enemy. I guess 0.75 is a decent amount. So yeah, sure, if you are a tanky solo laner, maybe get this. And maybe if you are even as a support, you can get this. But I would say, oh wait, as a support you can't get this because support have an active skill from their support item. So even supports can't really use this. So I guess this is exclusively for tanky solo laners that maybe you are playing like a trio, then maybe you can consider this item. For solo games, really, I wouldn't recommend this item at all. Okay, Blood Rage. This item is a little bit special. It's your Hercules Madness from Arena of Valor. When your health is low, oh wait, this is not a Hercules Madness. This is Rock Shield from Arena of Valor. But unlike Rock Shield, it gives you 40 physical attack. So it's sort of like a hybrid attack defense item. Well, for the defense development, it's a little bit lacking because it does not give you any physical defense at all. If this item actually gives me physical defense, then I would seriously consider it because its passive is actually kind of good. But because it does not give you any armor at all, then I won't really consider this item. Okay, let's talk about the passive. So it's basically Rock Shield, right? But It's a hybrid of Rock Shield plus Hercules Madness. Increase your physical damage during the duration of the shield as well. So, pretty useful. The passive, second active has a cooldown of 60 seconds. So, I think that's comparable to Arena of Valors. So, that's not an issue. And since it's the hybrid of Hercules Madness and Rock Shield, it has the best of both worlds, right? So, it's going to be a really strong passive. And a very strong active, I mean. For the passive itself, let's see. This is my first time seeing the passive also. Basic attack deal 4% health, extra physical damage. The damage increase reaches 100%. So I'm guessing it deals 8%. Each basic attack deals 8% extra physical damage when you are below 50% health. That is actually not a less amount. That's 4% of your own health as compared to the enemy's health. So if you are something tanky, like a Omen for example, who relies a lot on basic attacks, then you can dish out a lot of damage every basic attack to your enemy. So actually has two really good passive. As I mentioned, the problem is just that it does not provide any armor stats at all. And when usually I buy an item, I'm looking to have the item like increase my tankiness, I would say. And in terms of tankiness, this is a little bit of awkward item to have, right? Because it does increase your DPS, it does increase your survivability, but it doesn't really do a very good job in both departments. Okay, it does a little bit of stuff here, does a little bit of stuff there. So the main issue with this is that it's competing with this Pure Sky, and for the tanky solar laners out there, it's competing with Free Charge. I guess this item is slightly better than Free Charge. So I would say, sure, if you are a solo laner out there, you can consider this as your 6th item. Or better yet, maybe you somehow do not have Pure Sky in your build. Then instead of switching over to Destiny, from maybe you have something like that. Let's just show you guys. Maybe the late game I switch my boost out for this revive item. Okay. And then enemy kill me, then I revive. Then I will sell my revive item for this swap my revive item out for Blood Rage instead of this Destiny thing. Okay. Then I would say this item gives better stats than Destiny. Also, it gives 2 very good passive, and it's definitely better than Destiny for escaping the. When you are reviving, usually you are faced with a very dire situation, so you want to escape, right? This actually provides more survivability to you as compared to Destiny. The only bad thing about this is the active skill, right? So usually a lot of heroes already have Pure Sky as one of their item slots. So if you buy this item, then you have 2 active items, right? You will not get this item active, and that's going to be really bad for you. So yeah, unless you don't have an active item in your slots, then you can seriously consider this. But usually, as I mentioned, 70-80% of the chance, a lot of Slayer laners are using Pure Sky, and this situation won't be that applicable to them. Yeah, so that sort of covers all my explanation for physical and defense items and movement items, I guess. And in the next stream session, we'll talk about magical items, jungling. Well, I'll skip the jungling, I think. I'll just go straight to magical and roaming items. So yeah, stream has gone way longer than what I expected. Thank you anybody for actually coming in and viewing this stream right now. So I think I'll end it here. See you guys on the second stream. Bye for now. Okay, give me a while I'll try to end the stream. I'm still fairly new to this. End. Okay, bye for now.